So I'm gonna start by mast cells. They're best known for their role in allergy and anaphylaxis. They're a cousin to the basal cells, which are part of the immune system. They are present in most of your tissues, which surround your blood vessels and your nerves. They are rich in heparin and histamine, and they're believed to play a role in wound healing, asthma, eczema, rheumatoid, your autoimmune disease, and blood vessel growth, it said. So they are stimulated by several different things: light, heat, cold, trauma, vibration, or pressure is what stimulates the mast cells, and then that causes them to release histamine, cytokines, tryptase, and heparin is released when they're stimulated. So that's what causes the reaction. The signs and symptoms of having a mast cell reaction is local edema, itching, shortness of breath, redness, and warmth. And actually the red man syndrome from vancomycin is a mast cell reaction. I thought that was interesting. I didn't know that. Symptoms, you should just treat the symptoms if you have that. On Lynn Hadaway's site, she had a little thing about that. And she said don't take the line out because you need secure access. It will be short-lived. And so just treat the symptoms until those resolve. And a lot of, I think on ivtherapy.net, there were people that had written in that had that. We've had it once at our facility. It's pretty scary when that happens to you. But most of the ones from the IV site, they said they were anxious people that were nervous about it before they ever started. Our situation was an elderly woman who was very respiratory compromised before we started. We got through the procedure, and then as soon as we flushed it, she went into this acute even more short of air than she was before. She got red, blood pressure kind of dropped, and then it resolved fairly quickly. However, in her case, I didn't have anything to do, I think, with that part of it, but the patient ended up, because of her respiratory status, she had a bad heart, she ended up in the ICU with a heart attack. So on her then presentation after that for several times, of course she would never let us touch her because we gave her a heart attack. So that was her take on it. But the next placement after that reaction happened, she was handled by interventional radiology, and they actually treated her with Benadryl before they picked her. And they did that every time after that they picked her, and so she never had any other trouble. But we have had one incidence of that at our facility.
Do you know if once you have it, is there an increased chance of you having it again?
Some places said that it did, and some said it didn't. So, but I think like her situation, if you have it, we have another patient that has it, we are going to pre-treat them. Tell them they have to have a dose of Benadryl. I mean, it was good enough for interventional, it's good enough for me. So I would probably pre-treat them again, would be my thing. But Lynn Hadaway on her site, she said her recommendation is do not take the line out. Your challenge will be convincing if there's a physician there to leave the line in. But she said don't take it out because it happens from red man syndrome and anything that's going to stimulate that, so it will quickly resolve itself. And it happened as soon as we flushed it. Was all dressed up, and the final flush on it is when this patient had it. So that's all I have about that.
Do you know whether or not it ever said anything about accessing a port having that same kind of problem?
It did not.
Because there's, why I'm asking that, there's this lady that we had a couple weeks ago, and she was so nervous. And this was the very first time that we were in access report, and who was put in vascular. But we were getting ready to access report, and as soon as we did, and she made it through it, but I mean, one of the nurses was holding her hand, I mean, she had nailed water, stuff like that. But by the time we got her hooked up to an IV, nothing's in it, just normal saline, and all of a sudden she just flared right then. And we were all trying to figure out, because after what you told me that one day, nobody could really decide what it was. The doctor couldn't decide what it was, and I kept saying, well, can you have that with that? And I wasn't sure.
I mean, I don't see why you couldn't.
Yeah.
But it didn't mention but I don't see why you couldn't. It would be the same.
And what did you say, flushing with the saline, how did that stimulate the situation? Because I know we had talked
Well,
about that.
my guess, it didn't really specifically spell that out in any of the things that I read, but my guess would be when we put that in, we probably had some of that on the end of that. On the, we probably put more than a single lumen in the patient.
Right.
So my guess will be that when we went through those cells and stimulated that, we
Okay.
drug some of that in,
Okay.
and then when we
Okay.
flushed that out,
Okay,
I don't know, I'm just guessing, but
okay, that makes sense.
that would be my clue
Makes
at
sense,
that.
yeah.
Oh,
So
how quickly, when you say resolves quickly, how quickly?
anywhere in the references said anywhere from seconds to a few minutes.
And the reason I'm asking is because there have been times before we had the technology that we have now, where I put one in, and at the time, I thought I was in the right atrium and I was causing an arrhythmia.
Right.
And the patient, got red, and they were like, huh, and I would back it out like 3 or 5 centimeters,
Right.
and I stayed with them, and it stopped. In my mind, it was because I was in the right atrium.
You pulled it back.
But then, I think Debbie had said something that, no, you probably weren't. But I'm wondering if I had
If
caused
that
the
wasn't what
mast
was
cell
going on.
reaction.
Yeah.
And it just coincidentally, when I pulled it back, it was just in the process. Because
Just
then when I'd
happened.
get an x-ray, it'd be like, upper SVC, and I'm like, well, then I couldn't have been way too much in the right
Yeah,
atrium.
probably was before we
probably
really
was.
knew what was.
Right.
That would be my guess, yeah. So, yeah, you don't want to have it more than once.
Oh, I can't happen.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
You're welcome.